Now, on to Aussie picks of the week. And let's start with this interesting one. And I've got to say, this title really caught my eye. Giles, tell us, what is the Island of Dr. Moron?
The Island of Dr. Moron. Okay, so this is an original Australian musical. So, you know, I see your ears pricking up underneath the cans.
That's right.
This
musical, you say?
Musical, yes. La, 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 la. No, so a guy called Chris DOCKRILL wrote who comes from Kempsey parts in the north of New South Wales. He was a high school teacher, and he created this musical with high school kids. Oh, it must be getting on for a decade ago. He then went away and decided he really thought that this was worth pursuing harder. So he actually retired early from teaching in order to follow a passion. He brought the show last year down to Sydney, revamped the old Academy Twin into a theatre. He paid for the construction for it to be redone, and they ran a month-long season there. And look, it was certainly divisive, and it is such a different musical that there's no one's going to say that this is, an
what
obvious
type of
comparison.
musical is it?
Rock, proper rock musical.
Wow.
There's a full rock band sitting on stage. You can see them the whole time, and it's got its high school musical roots, very much on the stage there, because basically it does that thing that when it gets to a song, quite often essentially the plot stops, the dancers come on, they have a bit of a dance and a sing, and then they go back to the plot. And look, it's not the most extraordinary plot. It's it's not particularly PC. It's a couple of essentially white Americans stranded on an island which turns out to have voodoo involved, and there is a mad scientist who is turning people into animals.
Nothing wrong with voodoo.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's just that the PC police could definitely have a field day here if they chose to. But it's sort of openly playing with. It's a pastiche of a lot of those old acceptances,
okay.
and I know he's modelled it on the Rocky Horror Show. Am I going to say it's as good as that?
It sounds like it. No,
I'm not going to. But that would be quite an extraordinary statement.
It's culty.
It is. It is aiming for a cult audience, but it's also aiming to show that you can create a big, flashy musical without having to go to the Broadway, a lot of the Broadway established formats. So look, I'm not going to say this. I found this tough going at times because it keeps stopping and doing a song and then going again and stopping and going. But it is so full of energy. It is quite frantic, and you get swept up in it. And now they filmed a lot of that production. And they now have a 5.1 Dolby full cinematic release. And they did a screening of this down in Opera Keys, Dendy Opera Keys, a couple of weeks ago, full house. And so now they're doing one of these things where you can book your own screening. So the reason we're talking about this now in the film segment is
this guy's going to be rich.
Well, he's certainly going to get this out there no matter what. And I've got to say, that's worth giving some attention to, if for no other reason. He is determined that people should see this musical. This guy's retired from teaching. He's sacrificed everything and has written all of this himself. And it's I've got the soundtrack at home. Do I listen to it a lot? No. Do I listen to it? Yes, it's fun. But it's essentially, you can now go and judge it yourself. I know there's going to be a Dendy Newtown screening, apparently May 9th. But yeah, look, if you Google about this, The Island of Dr. Moron, it is the only thing under that category.
So I'm just wondering, was there a period that he thought, this might be in work stages for quite some time? Given that it doesn't have a very strong plot, was there any thought for him to kind of extend that, or? It's
not that I wouldn't say it hasn't got a strong plot. It's got it's a mile wide and an inch deep. Like it celebrates being that. Like it is. Right. It's sort of a lot of pastiche of that Island of Dr. Moreau and the old. It's sort of a quasi 50s musical style with a rock opera layer. It is very hard to define because it is different to everything else. And it got slammed by the Herald, and I think probably a little unfairly. But it is it's really different, and I just think it's worth seeing this film because essentially Chris DOCKRILL, who wrote it, is not going to go away. He sees this as potentially one day making it overseas.
Look,
West End,
Broadway.
Off to
him. That's very courageous.
He's quite right. There's no one who's doing this at the moment, like making an Australian musical from scratch and then making the cinema version of it so that people who can't make it to Oxford Street in Sydney last year get to see it anyway, and he hopefully develops this groundswell of support. I am confident though that this will be a pretty high quality cinematic thing. Just they filmed it so intensely. I know they spent a lot of time in post with this. No one. I don't have the names in front of me, and okay. Unknowns. They brought some people over from Broadway, because it's got some African American roles, and so they brought actually some African American cast over.
This is big for Australia.
The ambition of this cannot be contained. And that's essentially why
And it
I'm
got
still talking
slammed.
about this.
I don't understand
It got
it.
slammed by one. It got supported by a lot of other people. But I think, this aimed high didn't. It was very hard for people to know what to expect, and I think some people walked in expecting polished West End style musical. This was in last year. This is sitting there comparing, constantly up against things like My Fair Lady, and all of the Annies and the polished productions that we see. And I love those shows. I'm a huge musicals fan, but I think it was almost like the media that did send reviewers didn't even know which reviewers to send, and so it caught people off guard. I think it's worth judging for yourself. You can go online and you can watch plenty of this. You'll get a sense and taste for it yourself. I'm not going to say this is for everyone,
okay? But
if you like the idea of an original Australian musical,
I do
support this.
Hands up.
And you can get this to go to your cinema. The thing about the way this is being structured is they're not releasing it normally. They're doing one of these online releases where you can book it, and if enough people say they'll go, then they'll put it on in your cinema. So if you and 10 of your mates decide that you want to see this film, just book a session and it'll happen.
This is a party. This is a birthday party thing.
Absolutely.
I think it's did you like it? Is it
I
funny?
did.
Is it good?
I have a huge fondness for this. It is whether it is objectively good, I almost don't know, because some parts of it are so outlandishly bad, but you get the feeling they're willfully so. Like it is, and when it is, the energy and enthusiasm kicks it to the curb.
Quirk works.
Absolutely.
Lastly, let's talk about observance.
Yes.
Now, this is another new